We were high school sweethearts, and as soon as we were 18 and had both graduated, we got married. We were warned by practically everybody. We knew to avoid making that major commitment to each other until we had matured, but we knew that we loved each other, and there was no doubt in my mind that she was the woman I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. There were times during college when both of us might have wished things were different. Being married meant that our social lives were a lot different from our peers. During the 4 years we were in school, we had our struggles, but we always managed to come back together and work through them. It was a stressful time, and I thought that it made us stronger than ever. Right out of school, both of us landed decent-paying jobs. However, we were still new at living completely on our own, so it took some major adjusting to gain the financial stability that we needed to start our family. After a little while, we were eventually able to rent a nice house with a yard. We adopted a dog together, and we were preparing to start trying for a baby. Around Christmas time, I was shopping around for different gifts that I could get my wife. One thing she had always told me she was interested in doing was a boudoir shoot. It wasn't something that I ever asked her to do, but it was something that she'd seen some of her other friends doing, and she thought it was a fun idea. So I found a photographer online and bought a certificate for her. She was excited by the gift when she received it on Christmas morning, and it didn't take long for her to reach out to the photographer to schedule their appointment. Even though I was the one who bought the shoot, she wanted the actual pictures to be a surprise to me, so I didn't tag along during the shoot or have anything to do with it. The day for the shoot came along, and I'm not going to lie, I was pretty nervous. There was this random person who was going to be seeing my wife in an incredibly intimate setting, and I had some reservations about it. But she assured me before leaving that it was a professional she was working with and nothing would come of it. When she got back from the shoot, she was completely beaming. She loved being in front of the camera, and she kept telling me about how the photographer told her she was a complete natural. She was a very beautiful woman, so beautiful that people would ask her all the time if she was a model or if she planned on getting into the industry. At the time, she only thought it was meaningless compliments, but after the photo shoot, she started seriously considering it. If that's what she wanted, I was going to support her. A few weeks had passed, and the photographer reached back out to her to see if she wanted to participate in a free portfolio builder that he was offering just so he could try to get his name out there. My wife talked to me about it because she knew that I had my reservations during the boudoir shoot, but I knew nothing had happened then, so I was totally fine with it. She left and did the photo shoot. She even showed me some of the pre-edited pictures that he'd taken, and they were amazing. If he was going to try to help her get her portfolio together, I had no doubt in my mind that she would be booking gigs for runways and department stores, or whatever it is that models do. Several weeks had passed since she had done her first portfolio builder with the photographer, and she had done a few more with him since then. They were talking a lot more, and it seemed like it was mostly business related. I was a little bit weirded out by how frequently they were talking, and how she would sometimes step out of the room to take his calls, but I didn't want to be paranoid about the relationship. When I surprised my wife at the studio, I realized that I was right to be paranoid. I walked in, and I didn't see anything outright sexual going on between them. My wife was in her underwear modeling in a bed, but I kind of thought that might have been just for a specific type of shoot. I met the photographer, and he told me how wonderful it was to work with my wife. He even commented on how lucky I was to have somebody like her, which did rub me the wrong way. They were finishing up with their shoot, so he asked me if I could wait in the other room, and I agreed. When I was waiting, I noticed that he had a dark room in the same building. I have always been curious to be inside of one, so I let myself in. Hanging up on the strings to dry were dozens of pictures of my wife, alongside other women, and they were in compromising positions. There were nude photos of my wife, and alongside those were photos of her with the photographer in bed. I didn't know right away if they were photos that were being taken for some specific shoot, but she didn't tell me that she was in that position with him. The more I looked, the more I realized that there were pictures of them having sex. There was nothing professional about what I saw in those pictures. I could still hear them in the studio taking pictures, so I snagged a couple of them off the drying rope and put them in my bag. I picked my head back inside, trying to hold back my rage with everything in me. I just yelled at them that I had to go into the office and enjoy the rest of their time. I was fuming. She had been coming here under the guise of trying to start a career in modeling, but she was sleeping with the photographer. When I got back home, I instantly looked through their emails and saw countless messages between them. He was telling her that she was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen, how he had to be with her, etc. She never once mentioned how she thought it was wrong because she was married. She loved the attention he was giving her. I printed those emails and gathered all of the evidence that I could and put it in an envelope. I sacrificed what should have been the best years of my life being married to her, and she threw it all away as if it meant nothing. I was going to show her exactly how that made me feel. I managed to do some online sleuthing and found some of the other models he was sleeping with through his Instagram. I emailed some of them and their agents, telling them that I was interested in hiring them for a fashion brand I was creating. I got a surprising amount of responses, and I invited all of them to meet me at the same time. My wife was one of those people. They all met me at a studio I rented, and the photographer that had been sleeping with my wife was also invited under the assumption he would be photographing for a catalog. When he arrived and saw all of the women, it looked like he wanted to run away. My wife finally arrived, and shortly after an altercation broke out. All of the women were yelling at the photographer for lying to them and telling them that they were the only ones he was with. My wife thought that as well. However, she was too busy fighting with me. She tried to blame me for invading her privacy and going through her emails, but I told her that I wanted a divorce and walked away. I went home and packed up all my things to go stay with my brother until I could find another place to stay permanently. But the divorce is currently underway, and it's looking like it's going to be pretty favorable toward me. OP, first of all, I'm very sorry for what you had to go through. It's such a shame that somebody who you trusted so much would turn their back on you and betray you in such a way. The photographer seems like the classic sleazy photographer type, and it would have been beneficial to know that before your wife spent more time with them. From what it sounds like, he has no intention of even helping her with her career. He was just trying to sleep with her, and she did. I wouldn't be surprised if nothing came of that at all. Good on you for recognizing what was happening and ending it when you realized she was cheating. It's never easy to make that decision, but in the long run, it's the right one. Now, let's move on to our next story. We've been married for 8 years. We met in the workplace, and after my wife got pregnant for the first time, we decided that it would be best for our situation for her to stay home with the kids. It was a mutual decision because she didn't trust leaving the children with daycares or babysitters, and I made more than enough money to take care of all of us without her working. After our second child, we decided that we needed to upgrade our housing situation to accommodate our growing family. We were able to find a relatively decent-priced house that fit our needs. Because of its cheap price, there was a lot of work that we needed to have done on it. I was busy with my full-time job, so I couldn't take over the project, so we ended up hiring a contractor. I left the decisions on who to hire to my wife, since she would be the one dealing with them most of the time, and honestly, as long as I had my office space in my home to my liking, I didn't really care much about what the rest of the house looked like. She hired a newer contractor who had recently graduated from a technical college with skills in electrical work, plumbing, and HVAC. It seemed like he was a well-rounded contractor that could take over quite a few areas that needed work in the house. He usually works during the day, so I never really saw him. He was gone by the time I got home from work around 6 p.m. One day when I had a headache at work and decided to come home a little bit early, I realized that he was quite good-looking. I hadn't known that he was an attractive man before I agreed to hire him. I wasn't jealous, but it made me a little bit uncomfortable knowing that there was this man in the house who my wife would have been crazy not to find attractive. I trusted her, so I didn't think she was going to do anything with the man. When I saw him for the first time, I joked with her about it, and she thought it was ridiculous. Whenever I would be home from work, she would tell me about everything that happened during the day, what the contractor had told her, and what they'd done. From the sounds of it, it seemed like they were generally out of each other's hair. One day, there was a small fire in the office, and after the fire department came and put it out, our boss just had everybody go home early because of the strong smell left behind. I was so thankful to leave. It was a Friday, and I was going to be getting a head start on the weekend, so I was thrilled. That feeling instantly vanished when I walked into my house and heard silence inside. My wife's car was in the driveway, and the contractor's van was there too. I expected to hear noises of his working, or at least some sign of my wife being there, but there was nothing. I had made it a habit not to yell for my wife when I got home to avoid the possibility of waking up our baby during their nap. So I walked through the house looking for my wife. When I made it to our bedroom, I heard the noise inside before I opened the door. There was a soft thudding noise, and every now and then I could hear stifled moaning. Right away, I knew what I was going to be walking into if I opened the door. I braced myself for what I might see when I opened the door, then pushed it open. Of course, my suspicions were confirmed when I saw the contractor in bed with my wife. They didn't even notice me right away. I yelled at them, asking what was going on, and the contractor jumped away from my wife and she sat up, trying to cover herself and telling me that it wasn't what it looked like. I couldn't understand how she could try to rationalize what I had just seen as being something else, but she was. I stormed out without saying a word or even bothering to listen to her excuses and checked myself into a hotel for the night. I spent about half of the night tossing and turning and trying to think of what my next steps would be. I had absolutely no desire to be with her ever again, but filing for divorce and saying I caught her cheating would only be my word against hers. She could easily lie and say that I was accusing her of something false. I needed proof. After doing some digging online, I learned that I could look at my detailed phone bill to see what calls and text messages had been sent out. Apparently, the providers keep records of all of that. The more I looked, the more I realized what happened with her and the contractor was not a one-time thing. They communicated quite often, and some of the text messages that they shared were very explicit. I saved that information so I could use it in our divorce filings. But I still felt like I needed to do something else to get revenge. I knew that if her parents found out about what she did, they would practically disown her. I was family to them, and knowing that their daughter cheated on her husband and stole a happy life away from her children would upset them. In the morning, I gave them a call and asked if I could come to dinner with them sometime soon because I was planning a surprise for my wife. All the while, she was texting me and calling me nonstop, begging me to come home and telling me to think about the children. As if she was thinking about the children when she was cheating on me. I had dinner with her parents, and her sister came along as well. While we were there, we caught up, and they asked me why I gathered them all, and I told them about what happened. I showed them some of the tamer messages between her and the contractor, wanting to spare them the gory details of what their daughter was saying. They were appalled by her behavior. They called her later that night and told her how disappointed she was and how wrong she had been for throwing away a good marriage. I knew she felt badly too, and she wanted to do what she could to fix it, but I wasn't going to hear that. I took the evidence that I had to my divorce attorney and started the filing. In the end, I let her keep the house that she and the contractor had built together, and I bought a new one for myself. I didn't have to pay any spousal support because she had violated the terms of our marriage, so she was forced to get a job. We now have joint custody of our kids, and we try to be amicable with each other so they aren't hurt. OP, it's never easy realizing that your partner is being unfaithful, and it's especially more difficult when children are in the picture. What she did with the contractor was a breach of your union, and divorce was the only way out of it. However, I am glad that you two are able to be friendly with each other for your children's sake. It's very clear that she knew all along that what she was doing was wrong, but she either didn't care or wasn't strong enough to resist the temptation. I wish nothing but the best for you in the future, and hope you can move on from here and be happy. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care.